I'm Peter Hurst. I'm the Dean for Executive Education at the MIT Sloan School. We're very honored to have been associated with this event for many years, and I'm even more honored to be asked to come and welcome the next speaker, who you all know from your programs and catalogs, is Peter Weill. You all know Peter, I'm sure, extremely well. It's a bit of a joke to say that some people need no introduction, and Peter really doesn't. But I would like to say a couple of things about Peter. He has been recognized and acknowledged as one of the most influential people in the field of IT and management on a decadal timescale, and that is really some significant staying power. Particularly in a field that is so rapidly moving and evolving, and there's a really clear reason for that if you look at the kind of work that Peter does and the contribution that he makes to the understanding of how IT and technology more broadly is in real ways used in organizations and in management and in business, and is the fuel for the economic transformation that we're seeing. Peter also works as chairman of CISR very frequently with us in executive education to create and deliver programs for individual executives and for companies. And we've got a long track record of working with Peter and the CISR team in that way. And again, you know this, not only is he very able to interact with CIO communities and audiences, and share the fruits of the research and insights that come from the work of CISR and his own research in a very powerful way. He also is, quite frankly, one of the most capable colleagues that I have had the pleasure of working with in terms of really translating that expertise and that insight into conversations that are meaningful and valuable to CEOs and to boards. And so this is the theme of the session that Peter is going to address today, working with your board. And one final comment: in teaching in executive education, in fact, in all of his teaching, Peter is a very interactive kind of instructor. And I don't know if you realize this, but the words town hall at the beginning of this session title means you are all going to have an opportunity to be very engaged in this upcoming session in the next 15 minutes. You might get cold calls. You might have an opportunity to speak yourselves, but we've just got 15 minutes, and so I don't want to take any more time other than to invite Peter to the stage. He's going to say a few words, and then he's going to get you working in a way which I know you're going to find incredibly valuable. So Peter, are you back there somewhere?
I am. Thank you, Peter. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thanks, it's great to be with you, and I just want to add my very warm welcome to you all to the MIT campus on this absolutely gorgeous day. For those of you who don't live in Boston, it's like this every day, okay? So it's really beautiful. I've spent a lot of time over the last 5 years with boards of directors, and so I wanted to do a session today on working with your boards. And so I just wanted to get a show of hands. How many people in the room have worked with the boards of your company or are on a board in the last 12 months? Okay, that's about 63.5%. Okay, so maybe 65. So that's a fabulous group to engage with then. So I'd like to start by sharing with you some research that we have just published in the Sloan Management Review in the March edition. And working with 3 colleagues, we measured the digital savvy of all listed boards in the United States and then correlated that with financial performance. And 2 of my colleagues, I think, are in the room. Jenny Banner, is she in the room? No, she was planning to be. She's the lead director of BB&T, a bank in the United States. And Stephanie Warner? No? Okay. She is a researcher in MIT CISR, as am I. And then we also worked with another gentleman who's a lead director of a listed company in the United States, Tom Appel. And using a kind of machine learning approach, after we did a series of interviews and a survey of nearly 100 board members, we identified the characteristics of digital savvy board members, and then using technology, download the bios of 40,000 directors and assess them all on their digital savviness. And then, as you can see, we found that only 24%, less than a quarter, of boards that are listed in the United States met our criteria for being digitally savvy. And what's so interesting and encouraging about this study is the companies that were digitally savvy outperformed on just about every metric we looked at. The last one in particular is of interest, 34% higher market cap growth than the companies that didn't have digitally savvy directors. We found some very interesting aspects to this. Firstly, the number of digitally savvy directors really makes a difference. If you have one digitally savvy director, we saw no difference in performance. Why? As we did our interviews, people told us, well, we felt good about having him or her, but no one really listened to them. So, you know, two digitally savvy directors, in the interviews, people said, oh, it's great to have two, we feel good about that, but they talk to each other. The three somehow is a magic number, and there's a spike in financial performance of the company. And more than three, you know, 4, 5, 6, no statistically significant increase or difference beyond that. And that's probably because of the portfolio nature of boards, that you need skills across a lot of different areas. So what do these digitally savvy directors do that's different? Well, they do a number of things, but one of which is that they change the conversation, particularly the risk conversation, which is a big part of the role of boards, and they change it from assessing the risk of a particular project. You know, you've all been in these traffic light presentations where we look at project performance over time. Those turn out to be not all that valuable, but the conversation that gets changed by these digitally savvy directors is about understanding the business model risk, the risk to the company's long-term performance of not doing something new or different. So in working with the interviews and data, we came up with 4 aspects of being digitally savvy. And it'd be interesting, as you think about your own boards, to assess them, and perhaps yourself, on these 4 criteria that we think are essential to be a digitally savvy board member. The first is understanding how technologies will impact the way companies will succeed. And being tested by experience is a critical part of this. The second element is understanding the current technology set and how they will enable transformation or change in companies, and what it takes to do that kind of organizational change. The third is really about, and it's the hardest, I think, understanding when to commit, when to experiment, when to partner, when to stop, and what are the sort of early indicators of success or not success that a board should look at. And finally, it's really about how technology enters the conversation. And in these digitally savvy boards, it's part of every conversation. And by the way, it leads to different agenda setting. When we interviewed about 10 chairs and lead directors, and they said it really influences how much time we spend on different agenda items. And what is the structure of the subcommittees? And how do they report back? So those were very interesting differences. And this digital savviness varied significantly by industry. So for example, the information industry, I just want to get this number exactly right, 57% of boards in the information industry were digitally savvy, but in financial services, only 13% of boards were digitally savvy, much more defensive. Happy offline to tell you the names of some of these organizations because that's something we were able to collect. But it's a very, I think, important insight And one of the things I want to do in the time we have left is ask you, how effective do you think your board is at dealing with digital issues? This is anonymous, so feel free. It's a live poll, so if you could pull out your phone, I think you've done this before today, so if you could enter the data, that would be fantastic. While you're doing that, one of the areas I've been working on in the last couple of years is how to help boards become more digitally savvy. And there are lots of approaches, including getting new board members, but also what one of the interviewees termed digital tourism, meaning to go and see companies that were born digital, but also all kinds of educational activities. And I'd like to ask you in the room and make this more of a discussion, what is working for you? So as soon as we can we put the data up? All right. So we have 110 responses. I'm going to do something I've never done before, so work with me on this. Those who said very effective or effective, that's 21% of you, that's 21 people going up every minute. Please stand up. Please stand up. So you and 20 others stood up, thank you very much. Could you just introduce yourself, Gabriel, and just say one thing that you think made a difference in your board to make them more digitally savvy? And
well, I think early crashes from digital platforms and a lot of problems at the beginning.
So that caused
customer complaints and that kind of thing.
And what led to making the board more digitally savvy?
Beginning to track success as we were moving forward.
Okay, fantastic. Just introduce yourself.
I'm Gabriel Morales from Cinepolis, a Mexican movie theater company.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there are 20 other people in the room that haven't stood up. So, is there anyone in the back? Where? As they sat down again. You know, this is supposed to be a town hall and interactive, you know. So you're supposed to be working with me on this? Yeah? Anyone? No? Okay. You know, I was going to ask those of you who said they were not effective. I probably would have got less response. So let me ask a more general question. What are you doing with your boards? Because 65% of you, can I go back to my slides, please? What's working? What's working in helping your boards be more effective? You know, one of my goals of this session is to give you one great idea to take away from someone else, from a peer. So anyone want to help me here? Because I could talk about this topic for half an hour, or actually a week. Okay, please. Excuse me.
We've hired board...
Just introduce yourself, yeah.
Pradeep Vachani from EXL, a NASDAQ-listed company. We've hired board members with tech backgrounds.
Right, okay.
That come from, technology companies and not necessarily brick-and-mortar companies.
Got it, okay. And that's made a difference? Yeah, okay, perfect. And there's a guy behind there, if you could. Thank you.
Hi, Brian Stewart, University of Alberta. One of the things we're doing is changing the risk conversation.
All right.
We're trying to show opportunity risk.
Cool.
Whereas normally risk was always negative side.
Yeah.
So we're trying to show opportunity risk.
How's that going?
It went pretty well. We didn't quite make the final cut in terms of the risk analysis this year, but we moved it up, and they had a debate at board level which they never had before.
Brilliant.
We centered around data and the fact that we weren't using data in an analytical field. So that has changed. So maybe over a year or two, we might actually get somewhere.
Congratulations. I think that's a wonderful approach. I need the mic back because I've got to go over there. All right, this is the last one, I promise. Hi.
Hi, Ali Karimi. What you should do to the board is tell them to go talk to your kids because they are millennial. They
Okay,
know what
yeah.
they want to do.
Yeah.
They are the moneymaker for any organization.
That's true, yeah. I have to say that works once, you know, but it's a great idea. All right, thank you all. I've got a couple of minutes left, so I thought I'd share with you what we've found have worked in engaging with boards all over the world, Africa, Australia, Asia, this country, Europe. And it's interesting that the boards have different flavors and regulations in those countries. But these 4 things, I think, are universal. The first is help the board ask the question, do we have good enough understanding of the threats and opportunities from digital that are going to hit us, you know, over the next decade? And I have to say, most boards that I've worked with are very good at answering that question. The second is, do we have at least 3 digitally savvy directors and working on an understanding of digital issues amongst all directors? A short-term fix is to have a tech committee. And you can have internal and external board members or advisors on that tech committee. I'm not a big advocate of it for more than 2 or 3 years. I think at that point, you have to have the whole board engaged, particularly in high clock speed industries like telco, software, and information, but pretty much every industry today. The third is what do we do about increasing the digital savvy of board members that we want to keep, you know, that have got great value for the company and maybe didn't grow up in that digital experience. And so talk to their kids, yes. Digital tourism, anything hands-on, you know, discussions, debates, case studies, things that went wrong, you know, those are things that are really important. And then finally, are we striking the right balance between weighing the risk of a current proposal versus the risk of not taking more aggressive action? And that comes down to 2 things: mindset, attitude, and agenda setting. What I think will happen is that countries around the world will regulate to have more digitally savvy directors, and I'm not sure how well that's going to work. So we should get out in front of that and help make our companies' boards ask the right questions. That's the role of the board. And the way you can help a director is give them a set of questions to ask that will help management make the right decisions. I'm not saying boards should make decisions. Their role is to ask questions, to oversee, to advocate change, to push timelines. So I would argue that everyone in this room has a responsibility to help their board become more digitally savvy. And I wish you great success on that journey. Thank you.